right. We're going to get started with our first presentation today with Brian Collins, former show writer, Walt Disney Imagineering. You may recognize Brian if you've come to some of our past events. Brian was with us for the Goodbye Great Movie Ride event, which was the highlight of my life, and I'll never top. But anyway.
Very sad.
Yeah, and that's what today is about, making everybody sad. So, as everybody I think in this room knows, Disney often celebrates the other park anniversaries in big ways, and my beloved Hollywood Studios always gets left out. So I wanted to do something for this anniversary that was, I thought, fitting. I love this park. I think it was a very special park, and I wanted to get together some people who made this park happen, and that's what today is about hearing stories from those individuals. So, Brian, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me out here, Tom, and thank you all for coming out today. And, you know, this was kind of really a fun event for me to prepare for and a fun presentation to put together. I went ahead and pulled out, I've got my green bin at home, which has got like all my Disney stuff in it. And I always tell my kids, if I ever die, that bin, do not donate that to, like, you know, Salvation Army or anything, because that's like your retirement. So I was going through there, and I pulled out like a bunch of stuff. Some of it you might have seen on the tables. And I thought I'd just kind of maybe walk through some of it and kind of talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing and how you know, what I had to do with some of that stuff. So to give you a little bit of background about me, so I worked for Disney only for Imagineering only for a short time, only for 4 years, if you can believe it, 89 to 93. However, after moving on from Disney, I've always kept a dotted line relationship back to the company. And today, I still work in the industry as an innovation consultant, and I work with theme parks. And you know, I wrote some storylines for a theme park in China, and stuff like that. When I was an Imagineer, my job was as a show writer, and when you talk about a show writer, you're talking about the Disney show. You're not talking about writing shows per se. I think that was Ron's gig, but mine was a show writer, so doing all like the creative writing. One of my first assignments, my boss calls me in, and he says, "Brian, I got a really interesting job for you," and I knew I was in trouble. He says, "Brian, I got a job for you." He said, "We're doing some construction on the back lot of New York Street." He said, "We're putting up some construction barricades, and I want you to write some family-friendly graffiti." Family-friendly, okay. No idea. And that was the fun of the job, is that every day when you walked into work, no idea what you were going to be doing.
Coming from the Bronx, I can tell you there's no such thing as family-friendly graffiti.
Right, only at Disney, exactly. I actually had put some Chinese symbols on there because I, you know, was by a little China area of the New York street, so I put some Chinese symbols on there that said "Mickey loves Minnie." At least that's what I hope it said, because I went to Epcot and I found, you know, one of the exchange students from China. And I said, "How do you write Mickey loves Minnie in Chinese?" And she wrote it down. She seemed very nice, and I hope she wasn't like pulling my leg. But in theory, that's what it said, among some other stuff on there. So anyway, this was one of the first things that I came across, and it was fun for me to go through my green bin, because a lot of stuff I had like put in there, and I hadn't looked at for like years and years. And this was a recruiting brochure that I had from Imagineering. And this is the cover of it, but when you opened it up, on the one side, it had across the bottom this like really cool timeline and these behind the scenes pictures and everything. But the thing I loved about this is when you flipped it over to the other side, you had that rendering, that famous rendering that Herbie Ryman did of the castle at Disneyland. So I thought that was like, wow, that's like really cool. So that was a piece I hadn't seen for a long time. I thought I'd share that with you. But let's move on to the studios. So my job as a show writer at the studios, I was mostly in charge of doing, I did stuff in all the theme parks. So if you ever heard like Albert Awol in the queue for the Jungle Cruise, I wrote some of that, some of those bad puns. My poor kids never had a chance growing up with me as a dad, I'm telling you. So I wrote some of that, but most of my work was focused on the studio. So I wrote, my main job back then was writing the walking tour spiels and the cello tour spiels, because those were changing all the time, because we were a very active studio back then, doing a lot of production. I also did a lot of stuff in the Great Movie Ride, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. How many of you guys had one of these license plates, right? So that was kind of fun. But, you know, the 4 years that I was there officially, you know, it was such a jam-packed year. There was so much going on. It was under Michael Eisner's watch, right? And, you know, there was so much growth and expansion. It was just...
May 1st, 89 alone, you had Pleasure Island, Typhoon Lagoon, and a whole new theme park in one day. So.
Exactly. I mean, just phenomenal. The Beach and Yacht Club was opening up. Typhoon Lagoon, as we said. This was a schedule of the opening weekend for Star Tours in the Walt Disney World Swan. And Disney, I'll tell you, one thing that Disney did probably better than anyone was put on an amazing press event. Charlie Ridgway, God bless him, was, you know, just an amazing talent and resource for this company, and he could put together a press event like no one else. And he really understood like the synergy of it all. So, you know, when we had these press events, a lot of the times I was able to work with the marketing department and work during those press events as well. And that was just a ton of fun. This was, so we were opening up, these were some notes I found. I was, for the grand opening of the Muppet Studios back there, I was hosting a TV station from New York City, and they were asking who they could interview. And these are my notes. If Kermit's not available, what about Pat Sajak or Vanna White or Eisner? And I'm kind of like laughing, or Karen Tucker, who was Miss America at the time, that, you know, Kermit kind of trumps Eisner and Sajak and all these people. So you never kind of really knew, again, whatever you were doing for Disney at the time, I never knew what my day was going to be like.
It's funny, I also asked for all these people to come today, so.
I did get to meet Jim Henson, and he was one of the nicest guys in all the world. Very easygoing, laid-back guy. Fantastic. How many of you guys remember Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Play Zone? So, right, so that was a really kind of a fun area that opened up too. And I wanted to show you, again, you know, one of those things. I'm sitting at my desk, and one of the art directors comes up to me. He says, "Brian, come with me, come outside." I'm like, uh-oh. And say, "No, I need you to take a picture." I said, "What for?" Well, he said, "We just opened up Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set, and we want to kind of do some new signage for the for the play area, for the movie set adventure." And he came up with this idea. It was a safety sign, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a safety sign. And of course, Disney, especially Imagineering, you can't just, you know, create just like a normal sign to put up there for safety. It had to be like themed to everything. So I go outside, and he's got this. It was kind of like a paperweight or a paper holder that you would find on a desk, and it looked like a giant paper clip. It was probably about that tall, and he actually had this kind of stuck in it. And this is actually the little mock-up that he did of what the sign looked like, a little piece of notebook paper with some writing on it, and he stuck that in the thing, and he said, "Go stand about 20 feet behind it." And I'm like, okay. So I go like 20 feet behind the table, and he's got that. He's like, "Move to the left, move to the right." And what he was trying to do was create a mock-up of the sign, and there it is. I don't know who that young guy is in that picture with all the hair, but that's what it looked like. And I don't think that particular sign ever got made. There's so many great ideas, you know, that we came up with that.
No, someone in legal had it that.
Right. Honestly, I think part of the problem is that if I go back, you can see that there's actually a paperclip prop that they had it, and we didn't realize that at the time, and I think the scale would have been wrong to have our sign in that, because otherwise we would have had to make the paper clip as big as that one was, right? And so the sign would have been about like 80 feet tall, so, but it was kind of a fun idea. How many of you guys remember Wonders of Life? So that was, I love over there that he's got the cell from Cranium Command. Gosh, that was like, I think one of my favorite shows of all time with Buzzy, right? I actually have chickens now in my backyard, a couple of chickens in my backyard, and they really are kind of like, you know, stupid kind of creatures, but they're very lovable. So, yeah. So back then, when we were doing these grand openings, if you were a member of the press, Disney would have to put together these really intense press kits, right? Now, you just kind of go online and everything is uploaded to the cloud and you can just download pictures and photographs and press releases and PDFs. Well, back then, none of that stuff existed. So Disney would put together these really kind of ornate press kits, and I think this Wonders of Life one is on the table back there. You can see it. And inside, you would actually have like these black and white photographs. There would be news. I love the publicity photos that they would make for these press kits, because you look at them, here's one of them. This is like, okay, and you can tell, like, you know, the cabin obviously wasn't moving, and they're like, okay, everyone look really scared and lean to your left. And, you know, except for the couple there that's like, you know, but everyone else, and everyone's like supposed to be scared, but they're all like smiling, like
They thought they were in a portrait studio.
So I love the old photographs. And then they would have, you know, the press releases in there too, and you can see these. This particular one was showing like who was available for interview, and I don't know if you can make out the names, but you know, Michael Eisner and Frank Wells and Roy Disney, and I did find on the back this guy here, Ron Logan, was in there too. So gosh, must have been around a long time there, Ron. Do you remember that? Did you get any interviews? No, maybe, but yeah. So. I love those old press kits. What about the Rocketeer, right? So the Rocketeer was really a fun time. How many of you guys saw the movie? Has anyone in here? So a lot of you guys have seen the movie. Wow, cool.
This is everyone who's seen the movie. It's in this room right now.
So, you know, every once in a while we would get these props in from different movies and stuff, and somewhere I've got a goofy picture of me wearing that helmet, and I was trying really hard to find it. I know it's somewhere in the house. It's not, I got to put that in my green bin. And we got like a bunch of like the rocket packs that were made out of like this like hard rubber stuff, and the props and stuff. So, you know, in this magazine, you could get this magazine, and it had like all this stuff. One of the articles in the magazine was about the Bulldog Cafe. How many of you guys ever remember seeing the Bulldog Cafe on the studio tour? So that was another like interesting day at the office for me. So, you know, my boss comes in and says, "Hey, Brian, Rocketeer's doing pretty good. We're getting some props from the movie." It's great, you know, because one of my things was I wrote like little plaques about all the props and stuff that were like on display in the Great Movie Ride or wherever, you know.
Yeah, and those plaques were still there, like through the end of the park, like the splash, or the end of the park. It still exists, kind of. But like the splash fountain, which only finally got taken down,
right,
was one of those examples of those black and white signs that would
right,
tell you what it's from. And yeah.
Exactly. There's, I think, the last two that exist out there are Min and Bill's and Gertie the Dinosaur.
Well, Min and Bill's is gone. It's not even Min and Bill's anymore. Yeah, Gertie's still hanging in. Yeah.
So there were some plaques, but he comes to me and said, "We're going to begin building the Bulldog Cafe on the back lot." So I had to like learn what I could, and next thing I know, there's the Bulldog Cafe. That wasn't like the strangest thing that appeared on the back lot, believe it or not. So how many of you remember Honey, I Blew Up the Baby? Okay, so my boss comes to me Oh gosh. This is Brian. Honey, I Blew Up the Baby. Big movie that's going to be coming out. Got some great props. They sent me out to California to watch a rough cut. I said, I want you to watch the movie and see if there are any props in there that maybe would be good to bring back to the studio. So I'm looking at I watch a movie and I make a list. And one of the things I put on there, almost as a joke, was the giant sneaker. Well, the next thing I know, we're getting this like 20-foot tall red Converse sneaker, because back then, again, before CGI and stuff, a lot of this stuff was that they actually built the props. So there's this 20-foot sneaker that's coming, being shipped to our studios, and we have to figure out what to do with it. So we stuck it on the back lot as part. Does anyone ever remember seeing that? So one person. It was very popular. It was very cool.
What do you do with a giant shoe when you're done with it? That's the other question, is where did it go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Dr. Scholes, I think, bought it from us.
For research.
Right. So, very, very bizarre job I had, trying to explain to my wife sometimes when I came home what I was doing at work. She's a school teacher. Go figure. She's still trying to, wants me to get a job. So, Dream Flight, another one.
Woo!
Who remember what preceded Dream Flight? If you had wings, right, from Eastern Airlines. And so my very first job, so Eastern Airlines in a way is responsible for me getting my job with Imagineering, because my first job when I got out of college, my degree was in advertising. And I always thought I'd be an advertising copywriter. And my first job happened to be with a video production company down in Miami Beach, where I was from. I was from Miami, from South Florida. They hired me, but as a script writer. And to make a long story short, our biggest client was Eastern Airlines. And ultimately, I was in charge of writing and producing the in-flight entertainment programming for Eastern Airlines. And then Eastern Airlines went bankrupt. And so for the first time in my young career, I'm out of a job, and I'm like, great, now what do? Parents were like, you're not coming back home. So I moved up to Orlando. My brother was living up here, so I camped out on his couch. I always wanted to work for Disney. Came up here, and I'm like, go into there. They didn't have the casting center back then. It was like little trailers behind the Magic Kingdom, literally, that you'd go into, and that's where you would apply and everything. So I go out there, I put in my application, and I'm thinking, I've got a whole year of experience as this video producer in Miami. I'm thinking, okay, here's the keys to the office overlooking the Magic Kingdom, and they're like, not so fast, hotshot. And my first job was actually checking guests into the front desk of the Contemporary Resort. Welcome to Disney. But it was a great job, because that's kind of where I cut my teeth and learned about the Disney culture and guest service and all of that stuff that has served me well, not only as an Imagineer, but to this day. And my timing was really good, though, because it was right before the studio was opening up. And shortly before the studio opened up, they were having dry runs through the Great Movie Ride. And I was out there just as a new cast member, wanting to check it out, see what this new park was going to be about. So I went on the Great Movie Ride as one of the crash test dummies. And when I'm standing in line, the guy next to me happened to be a full-time production assistant at the studios, Karma. And either he took pity on me or, he liked me, one of the two, but he found out that I had a background in video production, and that's how I started work at the studios as a production assistant. And then from there, started networking within the company and did some work for Cast Communications. I produced some internal videos. I did some writing for the company newspaper. I worked on some of these press events and eventually made my way into Imagineering. And the creative director out there, a guy by the name of Mike West, who was the creative director for the studios, they just had like a little satellite office, and he gave me a test assignment. He was like, you know, we're having trouble with the animation tour spiel. Here's the script. Why don't you take it home, kind of work on it, bring it back, and we'll see what we can do. And so that's what I did. And either he took pity on me or he liked me. But he liked the script. They wound up using it. And that was actually the first script I ever wrote as an Imagineer. Was kind of like my test project. And brought me on for like 3 months. And he said, now listen, here's the deal, Brian. He said, I can bring you over here for 3 months, but after 3 months, you have to go back to wherever you came from, at Disney. Technically, I was still, even though I hadn't really worked at the Contemporary Resort by that time for quite a while, technically that's where I was still based. So he said, you'll probably have to go back to the Contemporary. So, okay, I don't care, you know, I just want to, you know, bring me over 3 months, that's great. Well, 3 months is almost up. He calls me, he says, listen, you're doing pretty good. We'll try and get you for another 3 months. Can't guarantee it, but we'll try for another 3 months. And then after that, another 3 months. How many of you guys ever saw the movie The Princess Bride? I'll kill you tomorrow. I'll kill you tomorrow. Well, he never killed me. So, and eventually they wound up getting a position justified for me, and that's how I made my way into Imagineering full time with them. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I've been working for them almost a year full time, but officially full time. So that's kind of, it was simple. You know, if anyone wants to be an Imagineer, simple. This was a set that Delta had, speaking of Delta, right? So Eastern went away, Delta stepped in, took over. And do you guys, I don't know if you ever remember, but they were very proud of this plane set. It was actually,
this was in, if you guys were watching while you were eating or meeting Mickey, some of the B-roll of the production stuff they actually had a little bit with this Delta set was there.
And I believe one of the bigger films, blockbuster films that they filmed partly at the studios in Orlando was Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes. And I think part of that, the interior plane shots, they used this set. So it was kind of cool. And then we got to the opening day of the park, Disney MGM Studios. So this is a little preview paper that you could pick up in the parks that kind of was used to whet your appetite as the park was going to be opening up. This is actually the program that they gave out for the opening night celebration. So I remember it being a really very cool evening. You know, anyone who worked for Disney, I remember we went to costuming and they gave us all tuxedos because, you know, we were young guys, you know, women and stuff, you know, the younger cast members, we didn't own tuxedos. So they gave us tuxedos from Disney Wardrobe, and we went out. This is the inside, and I think I've got one of these over there, but, you know, they had George Burns performing in Willie Nelson and the Pointer Sisters, Big Name Entertainment. I see that the parade was changed from, it looks like 9:45 to 10. Ron, do you know why? It was raining. Okay, there we go. It was a rainy night, I remember it, because there were a lot of very nervous people. But the food, I remember, the food's really what I remember. They had like amazing food stations all over, and so this was from the opening night, and they actually taped that night, and that's what, obviously in the days before ABC came into the picture, they produced a special that aired on NBC on the grand opening of the studios. So that was quite amazing. And everyone got one of these tokens. Every cast member in the company was given one of these tokens. I think you can see the token over in the glass case too.
Yeah, and this was a tradition for a while. There were several park openings in succession where they did these, Epcot and Tokyo, and
right.
Yeah,
Euro Disney, yeah. So, and I think now they've become pretty collectible items.
well, now they don't give them things.
Right. Too many of us now. I mean, back then there were what, like 30,000, and now there's like 80,000. So
It's a coin.
So this is the actual, remember those press kit things? So this is the press kit that they gave out for the opening of the studios. And again, you know, it had all kinds of pictures from the backlight. So now we can kind of go down memory lane a little bit and make you guys all sad.
Yeah, so that's bulldozed. All right, this next.
Bulldoze.
Yeah.
I'm like really sad too, because I've got like 3 or 4 press kits and different press releases from the Mickey Mouse Club, and you know, most of them have like pictures or mention the mouse. I don't have one that mentions who are like what was her name?
Britney Spears.
Britney Spears. And there's another guy that was
Joey Fatone and Justin Timberlake.
None of those
and all
guys
those
are like
people,
in
yeah.
any of my stuff. I'm like, are you sure they were there? I don't know. I mean, I remember I would. For me, it was a lot of fun because I got to hang out on the set and got to know some of them and got to know Fred, the co-host. You know, just they actually were really, really nice kids and a lot of fun to work with.
They're having a reunion event here next month. MegaCon is doing
Are they?
something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brittany
I'll
gonna
send
be
you
here?
the info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How many remember Superstar TV? Right? Did anyone ever get caught up? So Superstar TV, just to refresh, if you guys don't know what that was, this was an attraction where they had like little sets from different TV shows or generic shows. And so this is like Gilligan's Island. And they would call people up from the audience and they put you in like these cheesy costumes and kind of like green screen you into the scene from the show. It was really kind of a lot of fun. The animation studio tour, that was, you know, again, it had a special place in my heart. That woman in the front there is Fran. I can't remember Fran's first name, but Fran was actually the operations manager for the animation studio. Really, really nice woman. And
That's the animator Mickey cell she has down there, which is
exactly
just like the one up there. Yeah.
So, you know, when eventually the animation studios kind of started to hit their stride and do a lot more actual production work, certainly Mulan and some of the other pieces. Little Mermaid, you know, they did. As a matter of fact, if you look closely, you can see peeking out behind the animation cell, you can see part of a color model of a King Trident that is that right, King Trident from the Little Mermaid?
Triton, yeah.
Or Trident, and there's this trident that he's holding in the background there. So they actually, but a lot of times they actually had a very active internship program, and a lot of times what they were doing, just so that they would have something for the guests to look at, is they would be painting these souvenir cells. Yeah. So
that's where that whole program began, which they I think finally have stopped doing. Disneyland still does them, but
yeah.
At least at MGM, they still sell a bunch of them up back at that Muppet store. But for a long time, they kept that tradition going long after the animation studio was gone, because people have been collecting those hand-painted cells forever. And so 10 years after the studio was gone, people were still on staff doing them.
Yeah, and you can still get the hand-drawn artwork. Like the sketches.
Yeah, and Disneyland still does the hand-painted cells too.
So, does anyone have any of those cells? No? Yeah. I think some of them, you know, some of them are more valuable than others and more collectible, but they're pretty cool. Another press release here. This one was fact sheet. You know, I was telling Tom, we were looking through some of the fact sheets before about like some of the projects that were listed on there that never happened. One of them was a Noah's Ark show that was going to be done, and I don't think that ever got produced. There was also another hotel that they mentioned that never got created. So it's kind of fun to go back and look at some of these old news releases.
This is Disney Decade is about to begin, and they announced like everything they were going to do for 10 years, which is a horrible mistake because you don't know where you're going to be. And so they announced like Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers and all these other things that they never got. Roger Rabbit's, Hollywood, all these things they never got around to doing.
Right. But you can see, Splash Mountain's on there, and the Disney, the Disney Afternoon, which for a long time was a cornerstone of the programming. At the bottom, I must have been making some notes. I wrote in some new executives announced today. Collins, CEO, Zahar's a good friend of mine, John Zahar's CFO, and Eisner PO'd. Hopefully Michael never saw that, but
I think you're safe now.
I think I'm safe now. Working under his watch was just, like I said, a very exciting time. He was, I really loved what he was doing with the company and what he did in the direction he took us. How many of you guys remember this, Catastrophe Canyon? So I just had to put that in there. Boy, that was...
Do you remember how many scripts you wrote? Because you said we would do script updates for the backlot tour as new movie props rolled in.
I was probably updating the script, if not at least weekly. Sometimes
so new stuff was coming in that regularly.
If not for, it was. If not for the shuttle tour, then for the walking tour. That's actually why I put this slide up here, because stuff was always changing on the sound stages, and we had kind of like a canned spiel that would talk about how the sound stages are constructed and what a best boy is and what a grip is and all that stuff. But obviously when we had production going on, that had to be updated. I think one of the more unusual ones that I worked on was there was a Disney Channel TV show called Adventures in Wonderland. Does anyone remember? And there was this one guy that played the roller skating rabbit. I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but he and I got to be a little bit friendly and would just kind of like, goof with each other and stuff. I would always make fun of him on his roller skates and, his buck teeth that he had to wear. And, it was, but trying to like explain what that whole scenario, it was a really elaborate, very, almost like a Tim Burton-ish kind of a look to it. Tim Burton meets steampunk or something. It was like really bizarre. But
there was this weird creepy edge to a lot of those live action shows, because Dumbo's Circus used to scare me a little too, but right. There was something always a little off about the characters maybe.
Here's another one of my favorite publicity photos from the press kit, right, in Alien. Okay, everyone looked really scared, but smile.
That girl in the front's not even looking at it.
Right.
She's like, imagine your name's down here.
And I think that's the same couple in the back there. It's like, get a room, guys. Come on. Okay, so great movie ride. Let's talk a little bit about that. Everyone asked me, like, what were your favorite projects to work on? And probably the Great Movie Ride was my favorite. One of the things I did, so there were some very talented Imagineers. I think Eric Jacobson was the creative director, if I'm not mistaken, for the Great Movie Ride, and did a lot of the scripting for this show. But a couple years into the attraction, my boss comes to me, and he says, Brian, there's some areas that I think we can enhance a little bit, and we need to kind of beef up some of the safety and just kind of improve the show a little bit. So we want you to kind of work on that. So one of the most fun jobs I had was going in and working on restaging some of the scenes, especially the gangster and the bandit scene where they take over the vehicle. And then also kind of freshening up a little copy throughout the attraction. But one of the things that makes this, does anyone see something like anything, does anyone notice anything that's like really unusual or kind of weird or anything in this picture? Most people probably wouldn't, but does anything stand out to you guys? So I've got the original script from great movie ride over there. And I'm going to take my camera out because I took a picture. I took a picture of part of the scripting, and I'm going to read it to you. And this was before things got changed. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Okay, that's the selfie. Here we go. Okay, so this is from the original script. The tour guide is hit. He's down. He's up. He staggers, falls, gets to his feet again. It's one of the great dying scenes of all time. He stumbles all over the street before he finally falls for the last time. Tumbling over the railing, he drops out of sight. Well, I think before the studios opened, they realized it probably wasn't a good idea for the tour guide to be shot. There were a lot of kids that were being terrorized, and in this early PR photo, you actually see the scene where the tour guide's being shot. Not only was he shot, but as part of the costume, they had a breakaway pocket that was Velcroed that had a blood splat on it. That didn't make it into the final version of the great movie ride. So one of the things I did was, I had to kind of go through and work with a buddy of mine, and we redid some of the staging in there. And this shows you, just to give you an idea of the level of detail that Disney goes through, this is a little bit of the scripting. You can see how there are very explicit instructions in there for the cast members to make sure that, they're not pointing the gun at anyone. If you were to go into the great movie ride later on, you would see that they never pointed the gun at, another person. They would point them at animatronics, but the guns were always pointed in the air or being fired, off in, away from people. And there's also a lot of choreography that had to be done going up and down stairs. These sets were a little bit complicated for the actors. There were a lot of trip hazards and things like that. And safety, obviously, is super important. And a consistent show is important. So we put in, very explicit directions of when they should shoot their weapons, how they should shoot them, where they should stand, where they should run to, and that kind of a thing. It was really interesting. One of the other things I did, and this is something that the guests never saw, but I wrote these backstories for each of the characters. So this is the backstory for the gangster. And if you look at this, what it is it kind of gives you the life story of who Muggsy the bandit was, or Muggsy the gangster was. And I did one of these for the bandit as well. And I'll try and read some of that, but it says, Muggsy is a classic Prohibition era crook a la John Dillinger. According to public records, he's 29 years old. His rap sheet goes back to the days when he was a kid scamming tourists and picking pockets. Muggsy has worked his way up the local crime scene one bullet at a time. And it kind of goes on and tells you his whole story. And then down at the bottom, there's some performance notes. Now, again, guests never saw this, but that was done for, just to ensure a consistency of show. How many of you guys have seen Wonder Woman? Right? So I was just reading in Wonder Woman, there's a scene where a bunch of soldiers from World War I are coming off the docks, coming back from war, and a bunch of other soldiers are going on to the ship to being taken off to war. And the set director for the movie, she created these little kits, World War I kits, that each actor had in their costume. And each one of those had like letters from home and other like pictures and photographs and stuff like that. This was something that people, obviously in the movie, it was never shown, but the reason they do that is to help the actors kind of pre-visualize, right? And in the movie, maybe, they're just, 100 extras to you on the screen who are getting off a train and walking up to a ship. But, for them, they'd love to like open up those little World War I kits and see what the letter from home was, and just kind of help them kind of pre-visualize and kind of get into the mood of that scene. And this is the exact same thing.
I haven't read these. You gave these to me ages ago, but I just remember being really amused with some of the notes and just thinking, like, who wasn't doing this already? Like you said, there were some Mugsies that maybe weren't speaking in a New York accent. Like
right.
Maybe it was
It
was something from very far away.
Right. So and like with any attraction, some of the cast members are going to play the roles better than others. Yeah. One thing that was really fun about working with the Great Movie Ride, there are some attractions at Disney where if you're cast into that role, you become kind of like part of a family. And the Great Movie Ride was definitely one of those. Like the Jungle Cruise.
The spieling attractions, more often than not. Yeah.
The Haunted Mansion. Is there anyone in here that actually worked one of those roles by any chance? No? Yeah? Okay. So when you get into these roles, I mean, the riders, as they call themselves, the Great Movie Ride, the riders, when I did my farewell, we did the farewell event at the Great Movie Ride. I had quite a few come up to me, and afterwards I had, through Facebook or whatever, kept in touch with some of them, and they get very, very emotional, and they're very attached to this day. If you're a Jungle Cruise skipper, once a skipper, always a skipper, and it's kind of like being part of a fraternity.
I was going to say, I have a good friend who worked at the Jungle Cruise for many years, and I actually met his wife there, and they still have barbecues and everything where they invite all these people they worked at the Jungle Cruise with, 20 people. So
yeah. So it's pretty amazing. So I think that kind of brings me to the end of my slides. The last slide I'll put up here, and if anyone has any questions, do you have any questions?
We'll get some time.
If we have time,
yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay. But if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'm very accessible. You can find me all over social media. My consulting practice is called the Brainstorm Institute, so that's why you see my website and emails, Brainstorm Institute. But feel free to, on Facebook, I have a Facebook page called The Mouse and the Imagineer. I'm on Pinterest, I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to find me. I like being liked. I like being followed.
I don't like to be liked.
Kind of weird that way.
Do you want to take some questions? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Does anyone have any questions?
I can meander into the crowd with this, right? Oh, he's ahead of me.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Brian? We have a couple minutes. Mr. Diffendahl.
I would like to hear the story about. Oh, look at that! I would like to hear the story about the Ghostbusters scene in the Great Movie Ride.
Oh yeah, so the script you have on display is the original script. So it even says "Great Moments."
Great moments at the movies,
which was the original name. To the point where I think some people brought up when they were taking down the Great Movie Ride, some of the stuff installed actually said "Great Moments at the movie." Some of the stuff was serialed in that way.
It was.
So that's how late in the game they changed the name. But you have the original script where they didn't know exactly. They didn't even have rights signed to half the movies yet.
That there were some things that that there was a whole scene for Ghostbusters in the movie. So the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was going to appear, and the Ghostbusters were going to take their guns and blow them up. That scene also has. How many of you guys? So. I'm probably asking the wrong group because everyone's going to raise their hand, right? But how many of you guys know the transition from Casablanca into the Wizard of Oz? You saw Sorcerer Mickey up there, right? And that little transition area originally was going to be the tornado from the Wizard of Oz, and they had fans in there. And if you think back to how it looked and how that transitioned you in, you can very easily see how that was designed to kind of be the tornado that took you into Oz. So that's still in there. There are a
What's
couple
funny
other...
is, I don't know if you know this, Runaway Railway has a tornado scene. I don't know if it's on purpose. I don't know if it was a nod or what it was, but there is a tornado scene in Runaway Railway. Yeah.
Very fun. I did not know that. But yeah, Ghostbusters were part of the original Great Movie Ride.
But then Universal got the rights from Paramount instead. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was a lot of the fighting. I don't know if anyone else is going to tell these stories, but like Streetmosphere, originally Disney was going to try to do like real Hollywood characters, like actors, and then Universal ended up getting the rights to a lot of those personalities, and that's why Disney did Streetmosphere, which were not based on any real people. And that's
Which I
why
love,
Universal had
anyway.
Marilyn Monroe and Charlie Chaplin and all those people. And there was like this bidding war happening for anything Universal or Disney didn't own leading up to both parks opening.
There's a fascinating history, backstory between those two, Disney and Universal coming to Orlando. Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian?
Oh, thanks. Looking back on your experience with the parks, what do you think about what's going on now?
So, boy, it's always
It's a
got
good
to
question.
I'm gonna-
always
What
got
you
to
wanna
be
talk about?
one. So here's my take on it. Obviously, there's some growing pains that are happening right now. I hope they keep the golden era of Hollywood alive in there. I definitely get why they're doing what they're doing with Galaxy's Edge. I think that's going to be just a phenomenal, fantastic experience. I kind of like what they did with Toy Story Land. I think the jury is still out for me in a lot of ways because for me there are just a lot of unknowns of what's going to happen to a lot of the core areas of the park right now. And I'm not really privy, anymore to any of that information. So I'm as curious as a lot of you guys are to kind of find out what's going to happen with a lot of the core areas. I hope they do keep the classic Hollywood feel in the front of the park. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I never second guess Imagineers in Imagineering. The talent that they have at their disposal and the tools they have at their disposal these days is phenomenal. So, we'll see. But I'm kind of excited. I'm anxious to kind of get past this phase of all the construction and everything, and curious to see what they'll be doing with some of the interior of the park. Yeah.
So since you've left, what is the one project you wish you could have been working on?
Galaxy's Edge. Star Wars nerd. I would love to have worked
Also
on
probably
that.
looks really good on a resume.
I mean, a lot of people say my head's kind of in space anyway, so.
Anybody else? Barb up here's got a... Yeah, they're in my closet.
Yeah, I was going to say, ask this guy. A lot of it does get destroyed, which is kind of heartbreaking, but it has to be destroyed. They can't keep it. Some stuff does make its way into other parts of the park. When Pleasure Island closed down, some of the Adventurers Club stuff can be found in the Skipper's Cantina.
But even like thinking of like the theme park Circle of Life, like even when Pleasure Island opened, I mean, Comedy Warehouse had tons of weird props from all over the place. There was
Right.
a Figment sign, like,
Right.
Follow Me to the Image Works, and
Right.
all these other things. So what happens now, like Brian said, they destroy a lot of stuff, but then the archives comes in and tags things. Supposedly, like there's also I don't know how much of this they even do anymore. Property Control mostly now sells like bedding and furniture and things like that, but sometimes they used to have cast member auctions and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I think over time some people have been gifted things. Imagineers who worked on projects asked for certain things and were given them stuff
I
like
never
that.
got anything. I would love
You
to have
worked
that.
on the script. That's the problem. You can't take the script.
I would have liked to have had the alien, would have been cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ben's coming.
How frustrating is it for you as an Imagineer when you start out on a project and everything's laid out and then they come in with budget cuts or whatever and they cut things?
I mean, as far as I was concerned, you kind of know that that's kind of part of it sometimes. So it never frustrated me a whole lot. Like I said, there are a lot of great ideas out there that never get made. One of my stupid little favorite things that I ever did was for Pirates of the Caribbean one time, they decided they wanted to have a food cart out front. And it was going to be a pirate-themed food cart, and it was going to look like a wagon that had all kinds of like pirates, gold and treasure and stuff, just stacked on top of it. And so boss comes to me, he says, "Brian, we need some names for the food cart." So I came up with what I thought was a great name for this food cart. I was going to call it Pieces of Eight, with ATE, right? Pieces of Eight. And I thought, man, what a great name for a pirate food cart, but it never got made. I was so sad. I'm like, oh. So, another great pun thrown to the wind.
Anybody else?
I was going to say probably for bigger, for some of these other guys who were with WDI for like 20 years, I mean, I'm like, in awe of them. They probably have more experiences to kind of talk to that where, man, we had this great idea, but budget cuts came in and changed the direction. But for me, it was never a huge thing, and it was just kind of accepted as part of what can happen.
All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys.